wants to play as a Vin Diesel looking woman who's cosplaying as some masculine Shaolin monk slapped into a retro futuristic sci-fi setting? No one! Nobody's excited to play with this stupid bold chick. I mean, she looks like a mix between Jada Pinkett Smith and a cue ball. Hit the like button and subscribe, baby. You know what? Actually, hold on. I actually do know who's excited for this. Let me give this person a proper intro. He's the reason why there's a chair facing the bed in hotel rooms. Yes, you can thank this individual for that. He is Neil Cuckman, the talentless grifter, who thinks he's like the American version of Kojima. But after Last of Us 2, he's the male version of Kathleen Kennedy. Yeah, you know who that is. The lady who's been destroying Star Wars. And everything she touches turns to shit and loses money. That's who Neil Drunkman is. When he's not watching his wife get piped out by Tyrone, he's destroying any video game he can get his hands on. See, when people say, you shouldn't have a problem with Last of Us 2 politics because politics is in every game. The thing is, politics in games by itself is not the problem. Some of my favorite games like Fallout are deeply political in nature. The difference between Fallout and The Last of Us 2 is that Fallout is a political exploration and The Last of Us is an indoctrination. The goal of political games, in my opinion, should always be make the player think, while at the same time being fun. A bad political game won't care about fun, and instead will tell you what to think. And speaking of Neil Cuckman, he himself said he doesn't use the word fun when making games. The guy so badly wants to be a filmmaker, but he just isn't talented enough. A Japanese journalist once said, The Last of Us Part 2 is a game about right and wrong made by people who think they're always right. I couldn't have said it better myself. Anyway, get a load of this disaster. This news dropped yesterday. A report said that Naughty Dog invested heavily in the cancelled Last of Us 2 multiplayer. The cancelled Last of Us 2 online reportedly consumed hundreds of millions of dollars before Naughty Dog stopped development, according to the new report. See, when Naughty Dog goes out of business and everybody is crying about being laid off, I don't want to hear any complaining about that. And by the way, here's another amazing quote from Neil Drunkman. Quote, who gives a shit? In response to the gamers voicing their opinions about Joel dying. We are going to echo those words when all of you bums get laid off. Because when it comes to Intergalactic, we have an arrogant, unrelatable character in this game that was created in spite by an arrogant, unrelatable, quote, director intended to agonize the very people he's trying to sell the product to. I mean, what the hell happened to valuing your consumers when you intend to succeed? Anyway, in a recent video examining Sony's live service strategy, Bloomberg journalist Jason Shrieker, who looks like a cross between the penguin from the TV show and an oversized albino rat. I mean, Jesus, look at this guy. I mean, doesn't he make you want to pull your eyes out? Ew. Anyway, he said that the multiplayer project began on a smaller scale before expanding into a considerably more expensive production. We didn't need you to tell us that, buddy. We already knew that. Don't think you're special because you got that scoop. Anyway, Naughty Dog doesn't make fun games. We already know this. They make, you know, interactive movies. So inevitably, this was something that was going to happen. They don't have the talent to make anything fun. And even if they did, it would take them 10 years to make. The real reason they cancelled this multiplayer is because if they released it in that current form, they were going to get torched. Everybody was going to roast them except for maybe the IGN, the Ignorant Gamers Network. Anyway, neither Naughty Dog nor Sony has publicly disclosed the official budget, meaning the reported figure remains an attributed estimate rather than a confirmed development cost. You think Sony wants that number out there? Can you imagine what their shareholders would think? So yeah, you name it. We got a failure in management, a failure to manage the project in a timely manner, and a failure to read the room for what gamers want. I mean, these guys are failures incarnate. Furthermore, Shrieker said that the game was not merely a small side project. He estimated that most Naughty Dog employees spent the early 2010s working either on The Last of Us 2 Online or the studio's remakes or remasters. Did you hear that? Most of them weren't even working on the Intergalactic. That is terrible. The Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet, reportedly received the majority of the studio's workforce only after the multiplayer project was cancelled. I mean, that is horrible. That is embarrassing. You know what? Hold on. Let's just say you had 7 years to develop a game and you still can't figure out the story or gameplay loop. Then you need to be fired because you're incompetent. This is the failure of Sony writing essentially a blank check to Naughty Dog. A blank check to a bunch of adults in a daycare. They're a bunch of children who can't decide what to do. It's the same with Microsoft and whatever slot Bethesda is making. The sad reality is that AAA once stood for quality. These developers knew what they were doing. Now it's a laughingstock of the entire industry. You can be bad at your job. You can insert your wildly unpopular personal agendas into your projects. You can hate most of your consumers and say it publicly, like you can proclaim it proudly. And then you can still keep your fancy job. It really is like highway robbery. And it's because of that AAA studios are dead. We are at the point where we're beating a dead horse. They will never make a game like Expedition 33 or anything creative. All they care about, and like we mentioned in this article, they're just gonna make remakes, they're going to make remasters, they're gonna push identity politics, all the while copying games from 4 years ago while actively removing customer protections and forcing away physical copies. These developers are allergic to taking risks. They just follow trends all day. And they wonder why no one gives about what they make anyway. Naughty Dog announced that it stopped development on December 14th, 2023. At the time, the studio explained that launching and maintaining the game would have required devoting its resources to years of post-release content. You know what? Let's keep it real. These developers are more interested in keeping their jobs than actually finishing a game. The actual video game, the product itself, seems to become secondary to job security. I understand to some degree that you want to stay employed, but when developers have little incentive to actually finish a AAA project. And honestly, that's just one of the many reasons why AAA games feel like they're deliberately being kept in development rather than actually being pushed towards completion anyway. They believed it would have needed to become an exclusively live service studio or continue concentrating on single player games. A lot of people were working on that game. I think there's a belief out there that The Last of Us Online was just some kind of side project while most people were working on Intergalactic. No, the opposite is true. Wow, the Intergalactic did not have the majority of staff until after The Last of Us Online was cancelled. And then most of the people in that studio came over to work on Intergalactic. That is just pathetic. You know, the thing is, you could take 10 years to make your next game, Neil Druckmann. You can even double the budget. But as long as you have some unlikable girl boss as the main character, is gonna flop. Least of all, having you direct it is going to tank. I mean, have they not learned anything for Forspoken or any other similar title that came out? It just got buried. Many people in the studio, I would say the majority of the studio was working on either The Last of Us Online or the remakes. I mean, imagine having your employees work on a remake. I mean, that is just embarrassing. You have another game coming out. Anyway, they were doing that throughout the 2020s, which is why we haven't seen a brand new game from them since 2020. Look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Naughty Dog in its current era is completely cooked. Amy Hennig and Bruce Straley were the true talent over at Naughty Dog, and they were pushed out by the cuckold Neil Druckmann, who turned Naughty Dog into the neuter dog, a complete joke. And what people don't realize, and what Neil Druckmann doesn't even realize, is that he's a bigger misogynist than any person he's accused of being one. What's funny is he thinks he's some kind of messiah, showing some of the best females in video games ever. And then he claims that everybody who doesn't like his beluga whale female characters, that we're all misogynist. I didn't see anybody complaining about, let's see, Linda Hamilton, Sigourney Weaver, Angelina Jolie, or how about Kate Beckinsale? They were in Terminator, Alien, Tomb Raider, The Underworld, respectively. And we all love those women, so what's all this talk about we're afraid of those women? Really? Are you dumb? You know what's funny? The last year or so, they've moved on from saying that we don't want female characters, because they know that the truth is we actually do want those characters as long as they're written well. They've moved on from that, and now they're complaining about attractive female characters in games. These people are some of the most bitter people around anyway. With Amy and Bruce there, Amy Hennig and Bruce Straley, Neil Druckmann was on a leash. And once the owners let him go, he just started on the sidewalk. You can say that he was the naughty dog all along. Look, joking aside, let me make a serious point about this. Because it's not his money that he's losing, by the way. He doesn't care. As long as he gets his sandbox so he can take a dump in it, that's all he cares about. And look, Naughty Dog used to be one of the best AAA first-party developers. That's what's sad about this. Now it's just a mere shadow of its former self. And on that bombshell, let me know what you think in the comments. Manix out.